music right now, but I cannot. Okay, we're up in five, four. Hey, everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you today. We have a lot to talk about. We've been talking about these Texas Democrats who are holding it down for the Republic. And I don't just mean the Republic of Texas, I mean the constitutional republic that is the United States of America, and that has democratic elements in our governance. But what's going on here? We have something called the census. And the census constitutionally means that you count everybody who's on our shores. That's what you have to do so you can find out who's here and who needs what where. Well, that's done every 10 years, and it's a massive undertaking. Well, okay. First, we hear that the Texas Democrats are trying to resist a reapportionment, a redrawing of these congressional districts in the middle of the decade. It's not done that way, everybody. It's just not done. It's not done. Okay, a few days after that, the president says we're going to have a new census. We're going to exclude everybody who's not a United States citizen. It will make America whiter and older, even though that is not true. And then the president wants to remove the homeless from Washington, D.C. Remove them. Remove them and put them where? In a work camp? I don't know. And put the FBI, ICE, and the National Guard and the police on the streets of Washington, D.C. Now, they've done something similar already in Los Angeles. Where is this all going? And think of how militarized Washington was on the 4th of July weekend when we had the military parade. When people said they saw the plane swooping down very close overhead and it was intimidating. Washington is a place where we go to protest because it's the seat of our government. Will you be able to do that with the FBI, ICE, and the National Guard and the police swarming about? Will that happen? Let's think about that. Let's think about that. And what about these Texas Democrats? They are standing up for us, and they have sparked a discussion and a movement, quite frankly, all over the country. Now governors are looking, and they're looking to redraw these congressional districts to offset what the Republicans are aiming to do in Texas. It's really getting chaotic. You have 15 completely Democratic governed states, and then you've got 22 that are Republican. What will all these people do? It's a lot of chaos, and I'm wondering if that's purpose. I wonder if it's on purpose, and I'm wondering how purposeful it is. So we need to talk about this with, of course, we've got Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, who is a man not on the run. He is someone who's running to freedom. That is what, and really, he's taking us with him. But we have got someone who I met on Saturday, and I have to tell you, I was so touched when I met this woman. Brilliant, brilliant lawyer. And of course, as the Texas delegation filed into the Rainbow Push Saturday morning forum, which we've been having for a little bit more than 60 years, and a few people heard that they were going to be there. Given the behavior of the administration, you did not know if the police were going to meet them there or if they were going to come in the middle of the broadcast, the middle of the telecast. You didn't know what they were going to do. Well, some lawyers decided that they were going to show up and show out. They said, look, if the police show up, these people have legal cover. You do not know what that did to our hearts to see you there. Attorney Susan Zesh on Saturday. You said, oh no, there are more people. She popped up all 60 inches high of her and she said, look, no, I am here just in case, just in case. And of course, we promise to bring up your law firm because there are some law firms that are really dedicated to our civil rights. Hughes, Sokol, Pierce, Resnick, and Dem. Hughes, Sokol, Pierce, Resnick, and Dem. I have a feeling, Attorney Zesh, Professor Zesh, that we're going to be hearing a lot more about your law firm because I feel like when you look at this series of events over the past, really, it's been stunning, little more than a week. You go from the Texas Dems having to just get out of Texas. 3 days later or so, the president calls for a new U.S. census. He's also driving by a golf course in Washington, D.C. He says we need to remove the homeless people. I mean, it just keeps on going. It just keeps on going, keeps on going. And so I want to know from you, I mean, now we've got the federal takeover of Washington, D.C., ICE, the National Guard, the FBI, and the police will be patrolling the streets of the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia does not have statehood. They have more than 700,000 people who live there. Most of them are American citizens who are not transient. Everybody in Washington is not a transient. It's a fraction of Washington that work for the federal agencies, like let's say not the federal agencies, but who work for Congress. So they live other places, or they're not native to Washington. They are, and once their time is done in Washington, they get out or they stay. But you've got a big chunk of Washington who are Washingtonians for generations on end, and they have no representation. And now you have the president who says, by law, I can take over this city anytime I want to, even though there's been a 35% drop in violent crime over the past year. In 2024, they saw that a 32% drop in what is it in homicides, a 39% drop in armed robberies, a 53% drop in armed carjackings. Even though he said it was an armed carjacking that made him decide to take over Washington, D.C., a 19-year-old computer genius by nickname Big Balls, who is a former employee of Doge, whose kid was carjacked by 10 people. That sounds very odd to me, Attorney Sesh, because I don't know who gets carjacked by 10 people. And since he was a former employee of Doge, I don't know what that was about. And this is Washington, so it could be anything. So you help me to understand, why did you come out for the Texas Democrats on Saturday? What is it about this case that is compelling to you?
Well, first of all, I want to salute the Texas Democrats and say what a privilege it was to be there, because they are a crew of extremely brave people who are standing up. We've seen, unfortunately, some threats by this administration made against institutions and people who buckle, who say, oh, okay, we just want to be on Trump's good side. But the Texas Democrats are an example for all of us. They really have said, we believe in the rule of law. We believe in the Voting Rights Act. We believe in the gains of Reconstruction that were finally legislated, not until the middle of the 20th century in the 1960s. But we believe in what the Constitution says. And we know already we have a president who doesn't, who's arbitrary in his exercise of power, who doesn't care about the rule of law. And one reason I wanted to be there at Rainbow Push on Saturday morning was to salute the Texas Democrats. And the other is because I'm a lawyer and I come from a legacy of relatives and mentors, and now I have students. I've been teaching full-time human rights at the University of Chicago for the last 20 years. I have students who all want to believe, as we have said, the Constitution speaks the truth. And sometimes that's a battle. And so the lessons of the lawyers who came before me, and the lessons for the students and young lawyers who are coming up now, is that we have to keep pressing on. And as we talked about already, there were a number of people at the event on Saturday who quoted the late great Fannie Lou Hamer saying, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so somebody has to say stop. Somebody has to find a means to say, no, we're not doing that. And the Texas Democrats are leading us with their example of bravery. I can talk a little bit more about lawyers and what we do, or talk about what's at stake in these cases, but you
No,
just
I
let me know what
wish
you're
that you
interested in.
would. I wish that you would, and I'll tell you why. Because we're watching a lot of very prominent law firms settle with the federal government. And it makes me
Yeah,
wonder, okay, wait a minute. What can you explain what these settlements are about and what that compels them or prevents them from doing?
yeah. One aspect of those settlements that I understand pretty well, because I was involved in the beginnings of the conduct that angers Trump so much, is that back in the 1980s, when the Reagan administration was refusing to recognize the political asylum claims of people from particularly El Salvador and Guatemala, because we were friendly with their governments. We didn't want to admit that those governments were committing massive human rights violations. A number of us then young lawyers, who had gotten into practicing immigration law because we saw it as a civil rights issue, because the communities of immigrants themselves were beginning to protest against the waves of raids that really didn't get started until the mid to late 70s. And so, because we were all kids of the 60s, and we'd been in protests, we thought doing this kind of law is a way to make the Constitution speak the truth, and that it applies to people even who aren't citizens. And one of the things that we were remarkably successful at is recruiting lawyers from the big firms to work on those cases. Many of those people, I think, came to work on representing Salvadoran and Guatemalan refugees pro bono out of religious conviction. The Catholic Church, the National Conference of Catholic Bishops, was very opposed to the Reagan administration's policies of deporting people, of preventing them from applying for political asylum. And so at that point, the American Bar Association did something surprisingly progressive and encouraged and financed training young lawyers from the big law firms to do pro bono cases for refugees. And so that goes back to the 80s, and those firms have kept up that tradition. They are supported by and encouraged by people from smaller firms who that's what they do for a living, by nonprofits where all the lawyers are doing these kinds of cases all the time. But they've seen it as part of their public service to help provide counsel for the unrepresented. Since the Trump administration started putting pressure on those firms, a number of them have, and they have been representing refugees all along, a number of them have actually called the nonprofits that have channeled those cases to them and said, we can't do these anymore. We're giving the clients back, which puts those nonprofits under a tremendous strain. And now in some of the agreements, I didn't study up and look at the terms of them, but I know that at least some of the firms have now promised to switch their pro bono work from defending the homeless, from defending refugees, from suing for failures of due process, from doing police misconduct cases, to working on causes that the Trump administration wants them to work on. They've made an explicit switch, and it's really a terrible betrayal of their principles of the rule of law.
Wow. And when you look at what he's doing with the homeless in Washington, for example, it's all part of a playbook. I mean,
Yes.
because when I found out that reapportionment is allowed, not reapportionment, but you can have another census, but reapportionment is only allowed in years ending in 5, Attorney Sesh.
Yeah, it happens every census. And I would say, starting in 1980, when I first came back to Chicago and was working with the Legal Assistance Foundation, we got involved in litigation back in 1980 against people who, at that point, people from the Republican Party who wanted to say the undocumented couldn't be counted. Trump has taken it further to say that immigrants can't be counted, because the end result of doing that is not only hurting the allocation of federal monies across states, because we're going to have fewer counted population, but it's also going to deplete our representation in Congress. And it has been a Republican agenda since 1980. Trump's just taking it further and wanting to not count any non-citizens in the 1980 census, in the 1990 census, in the 2000 census, in the 2010 census. I'm not sure about 2020 if that happened, but there were lawsuits filed by states, by politicians to say, don't count immigrants, because they were trying to shift the balance of power away from the Democratic states, because the states that have larger immigrant populations are mostly the states that are solidly Democratic states.
Unbelievable. Well, you're in one of those states, but what did Rodney Ellis, Texas Harris County Commissioner, say? Uh, Texas is a blue state that don't vote, and it's a rainbow state. I mean, you've got like California, you've got Texas, you've got one or two states that are really, they have everybody there in big numbers. And why I think it's Attorney Zesh, I have to ask Representative Reynolds again, and I ask him this again and again and again, why are you doing this? And I ask you that because a lot of people are functioning under a lot of misimpressions about what it is that you're doing. In the meantime, it seems that your senator, your attorney general, and our federal officials are really trying to put you under tremendous amount of pressure to get back home. I mean, and I will have to, of course, ask Attorney Zesh, if they're arrested very quickly, before I go to you, pivot to you, Representative Reynolds. Attorney Zesh, if they're arrested, then what? I mean, are they just taken back to Texas? Are they then taken off the floor and taken to jail?
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to answer this question in advance, because partly it would depend on the validity of the power of an arresting authority. Texas police, for example, cannot come into Illinois and arrest somebody.
Okay.
The question is to whether a Texas state court order would be, you see they've gone to a downstate Illinois court. I don't think there's been a result, trying to get a Republican judge in downstate Illinois to order the Illinois State Police to follow this Texas court order. So all of that is kind of up in the air, and we honestly don't know what the answers are. But there are always questions. I know extradition law a little better at the federal level. And in extradition law, if one country wants another country to send somebody back to them, there are a series of defenses. The original arrest order is invalid. I would be tortured if I were sent back. And so I don't know exactly how interstate extradition would work. But there must be some leeway that gives the executive authority and the courts of a receiving state of someone who is trying to escape the exercise of their home state's jurisdiction some forms of defense. And I'm a tremendous fan of Governor J.B. Pritzker, and I think he's going to do everything in his power to prevent unlawful arrests of Texans who happen to be in Illinois.
Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, help us understand what we're looking at. I mean, just why you're here and why you're still here. I think when I met you in 2021, I think you held out 38 days.
38 days, correct. Great memory.
Yeah. No, I had to think, because you were there for a while. And I'm glad that you're in Chicago as opposed to Washington, particularly now that Washington is crawling with.
Oh, yeah. There would be no chance.
No chance. And you could have gone to Washington, but glad that you did not. You never would have been able to get out.
Never. Yeah. And I want to thank Susan so much for her kindness and her generosity. It was such a pleasure meeting you at Rainbow Push on Saturday. My colleagues and I were so inspired by your presence and your generosity and your kindness. It did not go unnoticed nor unappreciated. So I wanted to thank you publicly for that.
Thank you, but it's what we do, It's
not, everybody doesn't do it. Some people only do it if they're billing by the hour. Okay, so everybody doesn't do that out of the kindness of their heart. So it is appreciated. And Santita, you mentioned the U.S. Senator, and it was John Cornyn. You mentioned our Attorney General, and that's Ken Paxton. But you did not mention Governor Abbott. He's the other one that wants to put the popo. He has authority over the state police, which is the Texas Department of Public Safety, and the Texas Rangers. And he's also worked with Senator Cornyn and President Trump to get the Department of Justice and the FBI involved. So Governor Abbott is also a part of this whole conspiracy to put the law enforcement on the Texas Democrats that broke quorum. But I don't know if you saw it, but a couple of days ago, former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder said he opined that the Federal Bureau of Investigations don't have the ability, based on this particular matter, to intervene. And so he didn't think that the issue was something that was right. But we all know that the Trump administration is not one for following the norms and precedent. And this certainly is unprecedented. So we are prepared through our own counsel that this is an ongoing matter. And going back to what you said, Santita, I want you to know that the reason why we're here, and to remind people why we're here, is not because we want to get away from the Texas heat, which we do. We're not mad about that. It's not because we were looking for a vacation. It's not because we wanted to shirk our responsibility to our constituents, nor our families. The sole reason why we're here is because we wanted to stand against the racial gerrymandering that President Trump, through his own volition, said he wanted 5 seats, and Governor Abbott gave him 5 seats that racially gerrymander specifically African American and Hispanic districts in Texas. That is why we're here, because we did not want to allow, on our watch, the state of Texas to set us back, our communities back, where you have the majority, based on the census, based on the data that we have, the only data that we have until the next census is released, that 95% of the growth over the last decade was minority, Asian, Hispanic, African American, 95%. The state of Texas is 60% minority, 60%. So it's a majority minority state. Yet, even based on the 2020 census, when we had redistricting in 2021, African Americans and Hispanics were underrepresented. So there's a current lawsuit that is just being litigated. The judge hasn't even ruled on that one, with LULAC, the NAACP, and other organizations suing the state of Texas. I went to El Paso to testify. So here we are in this special session that's not so special that Governor Abbott called, and we broke quorum, meaning that for those who may not have been tuning in, to have our Constitution requires a quorum, meaning that there's a minimum number of members present. We have 150 members of the Texas legislature. You have to have 100 members present is the minimum number that you can have, which is 2/3 of the body. Without 2/3 of the body present, per the Constitution, you cannot conduct business. So another bill couldn't be brought up for a vote. No business can be transacted without a quorum present. Just like some board meetings, per Robert Rules of Order, if there's no quorum, then you cannot conduct business. It's no different with the Texas House of Representatives and the Texas Senate. So when we break quorum, the governor cannot get this bill passed to deliver to Trump those 5 Republican seats that racially gerrymander the districts in Texas. And why is it so important for people who don't live in Texas? You may say, hey, why do I care? I'm in Missouri, Ohio, I'm in Nebraska. Well, here's the reason why. Because what happens in Texas is now being implemented or attempted to be implemented by President Trump in other states. We've seen the Vice President, J.D. Vance, go to Indiana to say, hey, we need this to happen there. We've already heard that they want to have it in Missouri to take out the only African-American member of Congress, Emmanuel Cleaver. They want to redraw his district, draw him out based on the same mid-decade redistricting. And they want to take this potentially, Santita, I heard, to South Carolina and target Jim Clyburn. So this is a recipe, a scheme to rig the midterms so that President Trump and his unpopular policies can stay in power with a slim majority that's in the House right now of 3 seats. So he knows he's going to lose seats in other places. So he is trying to cook the books. He's trying to stack the decks. He's trying to change the rules so that if he loses some seats, he gives himself enough cushion with these racially gerrymandered seats that he can still maintain a slim majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. So why is that important? Because that means that no matter where you live, there would be no federal oversight with subpoena power. There would be no ability to stop any ugly bills from passing that take away Social Security or Medicaid or ending more diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, or whatever else the president wants to do. There would be no checks and balances on the president because the Senate, the House of Representatives, controls the power of the purse. That is why it's so important. The Speaker of the House sets the agenda. And so right now, President Trump is able to get his bills pretty much rubber stamped by Speaker Johnson because he is a MAGA ally. So that is why no matter where you live, this is important. The balance of power in the United States House of Representatives is at stake, for one. For two, if they can do it to Texas, they can do it to, you name the state, if you have a Republican governor or a Republican trifecta. So that is why it's so important that we take a stand, that we speak truth to power, that we have all of our allies saying, hey, it may be Texas today, but they coming for me tomorrow. And that's why it's so important that we stand united on the right side of history, pushing back against this authoritarian takeover of Trump implementing these things across the country in red states. I appreciate even more the former governor, the former Secretary of State in Georgia, because remember he got that phone call from Trump and said, I need 11,000 and such seats. He didn't do it. Well, Governor Abbott, he was complicit because he bent at the knee and said, yes, I'll do it. Other red state governors are saying, yes, they'll do it. We need more statesmen that said, no, I'm not going to do that. It comes with a cost, though. Many of them are afraid of Trump. I'm proud of Governor Kemp and that Secretary of State in Georgia that had the gauze to stand up to a bully in President Trump.
AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. We're talking about the Texas Democrats. And really, there's so much that is going on, Attorney Zesh. I mean, because as we listen to that, I mean, it just in a series of days, you go from the Texas Democrats jumping on planes, getting out of Texas, just denying them that quorum. And you see the governor, every day he becomes more and more vocal. You've got the senator, the U.S. senator who's jumped in it, with the attorney general who's trying to become senator. I mean, they go to the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And then the president says, you know what they're doing in Texas, we're going to do all over the country, because that's what a census does, right? And so then he wants to remove the homeless. Now he's federalizing Washington, D.C. Help me. Am I imagining things? I feel like we're seeing this authoritarian takeover. Attorney Zesh?
Not at all. And one of the parts of the agenda that I know Representative Reynolds understands better than I do has been the gradual dismantling of the Voting Rights Act by a series of Supreme Court decisions since 2013. So just in the last 12 years, and there's a great article on the front page of the New York Times today called Justices Peel Away Election Guardrails. In 2013, well, first 2009, Citizens United, unlimited amounts of money can be spent to endorse PACs. So that's brought big money into elections. And you know who big money usually favors. In 2013, in Shelby County versus Holder, the Supreme Court said, well, you know, we don't really need that part of the Voting Rights Act that requires that states with a history of discrimination get pre-authorization if they want to change their district. Since they have a history of doing things that are racist, the Voting Rights Act in 1963 said, you want to make any changes, you have those checked by the Department of Justice whether they conform to the Voting Rights Act. So they just got rid of that. They got rid of preclearance. In 2019, in a case called Rucho, the Supreme Court actually said that gerrymandering efforts per se are not covered by the Voting Rights Act, or the courts don't have jurisdiction to upset gerrymandering because gerrymandering is just political, not racial. I mean, they're really, the dissents of the justices who dissented in that case said, no, you've got to look at reality. Gerrymandering is done with racist intent to try to dilute the political power of minorities. And so they got rid of two sections of the voting, or two uses of the Voting Rights Act, preclearance and gerrymandering. They said, Justice Roberts said, it's a political question that should be left to the political branches, taking the federal courts out of their historic role of monitoring what happens to districts and voting rights. And now, and this is, I wish I had good news, I don't. Now there's a case on the docket of the Supreme Court where they asked for re-argument this fall on a case out of Louisiana where Louisiana made two new Black congressional districts in order to conform with the Voting Rights Act. They said, yes, Black voters have been underrepresented in Congress. We're forming two new Black districts, and they get sued on that. And now the Supreme Court posed the question it wants the parties to address in October. They just did this on August 1st and said they think that doing that creating these two new districts to intentionally benefit the constituency that was in what the Voting Rights Act was written for is itself a violation, that it's racist, is basically what they're saying. Is it a violation? The Supreme Court wants to hear argument on whether creating two new Black districts in Louisiana violates the 14th and 15th Amendment rights of other people in Indiana. It is Alice in Wonderland. It is turning the meanings of words on their heads to accomplish certain ends. So it's, there's got to be resistance. And that's where we're so proud that we're in Illinois, a state that offers assistance and support to the brave Democrats from Texas.
So you see this as a direct attack on the Voting Rights Act?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't pretend to be a voting rights authority, but I'm a lawyer. I know how to read cases, and I depend on the interpretations of those of my colleagues from all those organizations, the American Civil Liberties Union, the NAACP, Legal Defense Fund, who have been litigating these cases all over the country and have seen an important tool be diminished in its power.
Shapiro Wells wants to know, how long can the Texas Democrats hold out? Because you've been going around and you've been attorneys, they've been going to churches and they're beginning to meet people and they're able to make their case. And I want to know, number one, how you're being received, and is that helping to fortify you? I mean, because number one, how much do you make per month?
$600. Woo!
So you do have to have a job.
Yeah.
Another job. Okay.
Unless you're just a trust fund baby.
Well,
independently wealthy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
oh.
So we do. Yeah. And to Shapiro's question, it's uncertain. I mean, I don't have we don't have an end date in mind. We have not booked a return flight. So it depends. But I will tell you, Santita, to your question, we've had so much support. Illinois has been so kind. I thought Southern hospitality did not exist outside of the South, but let me tell you, Illinois, the hospitality from the governor to the lieutenant governor to all the people we've met. Last night had dinner. Rodney Ellis introduced us to the your attorney general. I mean, who is
great?
Your attorney general for hours, any day, anytime, anywhere. He was such a gentleman and such a kind man, a former state senator that understood our plight, that worked on redistricting. I learned he held Obama's seat after Obama. And so but just so kind with his time, and all the people that didn't have titles, just regular people we met at the churches, from the minister at Trinity United, my fraternity brother, Pastor Mays, I think that's his name. Was it Mays?
Reverend Moss.
Moss, yeah, Moss.
That's right.
Moss. Oh, I mean, all the way we were received there, the way we were received by Father Flager. I mean,
yeah,
it was just
on the news. That was on the news last.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Wonderful reception.
Amazing. And
Pastor Stephen Thurston.
And I want to thank Santita and the Jackson family and Rainbow Push for helping organize that. And really, it's that foundation that really has energized many of us. And it has been overwhelming in terms of the support that we receive naturally back from Texans, but to receive it from people that have no connection with us. We've had
when people find out what you're doing and what the stakes are.
Yes.
Doesn't that make them very enthusiastic? Didn't they come up to you and say, well, what can we do to help?
Oh, absolutely. I was just like, just hugging and praying and, even, hey, baby, this ain't much, but here, just so generous, so kind. I was really moved, just touched by the overwhelming, just genuine, people, you could tell people are just being fake, but just really so earnest and sincere. Can I take a selfie with you? Just like, who are we? Here's to put it in perspective. At Trinity United, we had the lieutenant governor with us, and people were asking us to take pictures. We were like, that's the superstar right there, but it was just that level of appreciation. Like, thank you for what you're doing. We see you. We see you. And then we were met, we've met other people along the way, and it's just been so moving. And we're so grateful. And we were so honored to some of my colleagues, hadn't met Reverend Jesse Jackson before. So they've been so moved and inspired. And let me tell you, Santita, your mom, she left such an indelible impression on my colleagues that joined us for that lunch, that private lunch that you guys shared with us. And that those nuggets, those words of wisdom, the meal, it was so timely, because many of us had just received word that, like me, I'm one of the people that the Attorney General sent a letter to the Supreme Court asking to remove me from office. And so many of my colleagues were down and like, hey, worried and just scared. Like, am I going to be next? I'm one of the 13 with Representative Wu and some others that have been kind of the leaders and the catalysts behind this. So they were wondering, am I going to be next? Am I going to be targeted next? And so it really lifted our spirits, because we're human. We're not machines. We're human. Like, many people are afraid and scared. And I'm not saying I haven't had my days of doubt, but I really rely on my faith. And what's inspired me a lot to propel forward is when I think about, some of the stuff that, Miss Jackson was sharing about the movement and the bomb threats and traveling with Reverend Martin Luther King and Jesse Jackson, and how they were young and how they had to just make it through with people who helped them, when they didn't have many resources, and the threats and the danger, and they risking it all to fight in Jim Crow. And so when I think about that, I don't have a woe is me moment. I immediately say, okay, I don't have anybody threatening to kill me. They may be threatening to arrest me, which they are, and they have. They may be threatening to remove me from a public office, which they have, but no one's threatening to kill me. Well, we did have a bomb threat, but it wasn't, I don't want to get into all that. But the point I'm making is, I don't risk, wait. I don't feel like my life is in jeopardy.
No, hold on. I think it's important for people to know.
Yeah.
Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, Attorney Susan Zesch, that they did get a bomb threat.
Yeah, we had to evacuate.
No, there are people who are actively pushing against what you're doing,
Oh yeah.
starting with your governor.
Oh, absolutely.
And he has been on television, and
Relentless.
he's becoming more and more incendiary.
He is. And
So
Santita, that explains. Let me tell y'all, I
yeah,
want you and Susan and your listeners to hear this. I've been in office now for 15 years. You have to have you have to have some broad shoulders because you're going to get some criticism. But let me tell you, the comments that I'm receiving from email, uh, from I don't know how some of them got my cell phone number, but text messages, but particularly on social media, I've been called so many N words and coon and in this and get your A out of town. I mean, it's been ugly. I just delete them and ignore them, but it is chilling the vitriol and the hate that some people have lodged against me, and I'm sure my colleagues are receiving similar threats. You coward, you punk, you're weak, you wussy, and they use a P in front of it, and like go do your D job and go back to work. You freeloading this and that and this. I mean, it's been ugly. I mean, it is. I've never
And
received I've never received this kind of vitriol. Like it'll be, and I think, but some of it is because when I went on MSNBC, they played a clip of it on Fox News before Governor Abbott spoke, and ever since then, I mean, it has just been the most ugly, heinous comment. So, and I remember talking to Congressman Green where he had to have security after he called for the impeachment of Trump because he received credible threats against his life, and at one point he had a bulletproof vest on, and so the Santita, you're right. The fear of death is real. I mean, it's not the kind of imminent death that they face routinely when they were on the movement, which are dad. But it is real because these people are crazy. These people are insane, and they don't have any sense of respect for life, and they like I didn't cheer. I called out when they did it to President Trump and tried to then candidate tried to kill him. I said violence against anybody. We don't kill people we dissent with on policy. We don't kill them. But that's the kind of rhetoric we're in now. I keep getting all these messages like, oh, you need to be in jail. They need to come lock you up. You should be under the jail. And removed from office. I mean, those are the consistent messages that I'm receiving now from people I don't know their constituents. I don't look it up. I just kind of like try to ignore it because that can really mess with your psyche because it's been so much of it ever since I've been outspoken against President Trump and Governor Abbott. And you're right, when Governor Abbott has ratcheted up the rhetoric, the the Attorney General said we should be hunted down. Today, when we did make quorum, the speaker said from the floor that they're instituting a tip line. So if you see Democrats, then you call this number so that they can be apprehended. I mean, they want to capture us. They're using words like animals and prey and fugitives to describe
bounty hunters.
Yeah, bounty hunters. So you now you're gonna incite these dog whistles for go get them, go get them. So yeah, we've had to change locations several times from where we stay. None of us will allow ourselves to be put our video on, to show where we are. I mean, Santita, you see this in my background. It wasn't because I was trying to be cute. Honestly, I have this background because that's the only way I can have my camera on and talk to you, because that way you won't have anyone to be able to pick up the room I'm in, because that's how much we're safeguarding our safe location, because we know people want to come and get us and do harm to us.
Oh, I mean,
And we have unfortunately at the top a president who pardoned all.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
He is willing to. He's given a green light.
Totally. And what kind of message does that send? Like when you have the president given a pardon to insurrectionists that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. So those hardened people, those Proud Boys, some neo-Nazis, skinheads, those are the people that he celebrates, right? And then he rails on Democrats and liberals and progressives. And he just railed about Nancy Pelosi and her husband, Paul, who had been beaten. He just did that like a couple days ago and said she should be investigated for inside trader because they did well with investments. I mean, they're going after Tish James, the New York Attorney General, because she had the audacity to prosecute him. They're going after Adam Schiff. He's going after they're weaponizing the Justice Department and the FBI against anybody that had the audacity to stand up to him. So it's frightening.
The people and creating a new national police force in ICE.
Yes,
ICE is going to be the biggest. And we've seen a lot of critiques of the lack of standards of hiring. They're just putting on any thugs they can round up to be deputized.
Yes.
And they're giving $50,000 signing bonuses.
Wait, they're now looking to hire teens to populate ICE. Teenagers.
Wait,
what? Oh, I didn't even know that. That's
insane. You cannot. No,
it's
please.
Trump's Gestapo. They are thugs. They operate beyond the law. And that's his model for law enforcement. And this is a man who is now sending law enforcement into the streets of DC, which has had, as you said before, a significant drop in crime.
Right.
But they're going to be creating more crime.
Let me give this to you. This is from Common Dreams. Here it is. What could possibly go wrong? That is the headline. Trump's ICE is now recruiting teenagers. You can't make this up. ICE is opening up recruiting to teenagers because they can't find enough adults willing to be their racist stormtroopers in some real dystopian stuff. That's my euphemism, said one critic. And this is from Common Dreams, written by Brett Wilkins, just on August 6th. We're taking father-son bonding to a whole new level, he starts. That's how the U.S. Department of Homeland Security on Wednesday told social media users that it is lifting age limits for immigration and customs enforcement applicants. Evidence critics said of the Trump administration's desperation to fill the ranks of federal agencies tasked with carrying out its cruel and illegal anti-immigrant policies. In a move reminiscent of how the U.S. military attempted to stem flagging enlistment during the George W. Bush administration's so-called war on terror by lowering recruiting standards to welcome felons, gang members, white supremacists, and high school dropouts. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced Wednesday that we are ending the age cap for ICE law enforcement. You cannot, I will send it to you both right now. I think you need to have it. You cannot make this up. And there's that. So what do you make? What will ICE look like with teenagers, kids straight out of high school? What is that?
Santita, let me tell you, what's disturbing to me is that, teenagers are still growing and developing in terms of their maturity. They certainly don't have, with rare exceptions, the experience that you would need to be in that kind of position. So it's going to lead to more problems, more people that could harm and hurt other people. And this is a slippery slope. This is a desperate, foolish attempt to populate a agency that needs well-trained people that are able to do such a job with. This is insane. I don't even know that. I don't want us to get so normalized that because it's so routine that Trump does all these crazy things that we don't just call it out and just stop and say this is unacceptable. But it's almost like it's desensitized because it's become the norm and nothing really shocks you anymore. It's like you expect chaos from President Trump and his administration. He set new lows every day. It's almost a new low. And you don't even expect anything that is done in decency and in order. You expect chaos. And so this is further chaos. This is further part of his shock and awe. And I, for one, am appalled and just frightened that this would be this is going to what some people have predicted. We'll have eventually a military state.
We're here.
Where he would declare martial law.
We're
and,
here.
And he's done that in Washington.
Yeah, and try to implement a third term.
We're here.
Yeah, this is where we are.
No, I mean, we're here.
One of the things that to me is so astonishing is the petty self-interest of Republicans in Congress.
Yeah.
What are they afraid of? They're not going to get reelected.
Yeah.
That's the only job they can hold. I mean, it's just, these are people who all 400 and however many there are in the House of Representatives, 100 senators, took an oath to uphold the Constitution. And they're seeing it being violated. Their own powers are being taken away from them. And they simply don't have the guts, the balls, whatever you want to call it, to say no. They have no principles.
Well, it's very dangerous because, see, we're here and we act as if the spirit of J. Edgar Hoover somehow left us when he passed away 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This is what this is. I have seen this before. I lived with this. I know what it is I was talking with Reverend Dr. Ralph Abernathy's daughter, Donza Lay, who is a decade older than me. And she was saying, you know what? It was almost like a ritual. For dinner, the phone would ring and someone would threaten to kill our father. I said, oh, I grew up that way too. And we kind of trade those stories because literally the Chicago police were in front of our house and a private black security firm were inside. I was driven to school by a man who was armed. Oh, wow. Until I was about 14. Then my father had someone else drive me to school. And when I went away to college, I was frightened to death, Attorney Zesh, because I worried about my family. Because I never expected my father to live past 39. And that's just the way that worked. And this is where we are. And it was the police state then. It never went anywhere. Well, I think we had some hope with the church committee because they exposed so much. Right. And of course, as a little girl, I was interested because we were in the middle of that. Right. But where do we go from here? I mean, before we go, I know we only have a couple more minutes left, but I want to give them to you because there's something in your life experience that made you say, wait a minute, we need to stand guard because you've seen this before. I mean, you've seen the state push back.
Yeah, when I was a freshman in college, Fred Hampton was assassinated. And that for us as college freshmen, we're like just starting and we thought the Panthers had some interesting and good ideas. And then Fred Hampton's assassinated. And what we saw was that the Sun-Times was carrying the story of what happened. And the Tribune was carrying the police story that it had been a shootout, you remember. And the Sun-Times is saying, no, he was shot to death in his bed. So we've lived through, and then, it took a while for the small measure of justice that could be done to expose COINTELPRO, Hoover's cooperation with local police, actual assassination plans. But we were able to do that because we had some strength in the federal courts, but none of this happens just in courtrooms. And so the Black church, and particularly activist churches like St. Sabina's, like Trinity. I love the UCC. I think the Jesuits are great. I'm a nice Jewish girl who has seen a tremendous amount of activism by people of faith because they know that even if this doesn't get resolved in their lifetimes, we have to bend the arc of history towards justice. And so I'm not sure. I have a lot of students who want to go to law school because they see injustice, because I teach undergrads and they know I'm a lawyer. And God bless them that they're going to be the kinds of lawyers they want to be and be able to keep fighting and to understand that it's protest in the streets and ordinary people by the dozens, by the hundreds, by the thousands, willing to put their bodies on the line that can influence what politicians do, that can perhaps bring us to a resolution of some of these really, really difficult situations we're seeing now.
Before you go, so you're telling me that the power really is with the people?
I think so. Absolutely. We wouldn't have had the Voting Rights Act to use as a tool to rectify injustice for the last, 60 years had not people gone into the streets to get civil rights. It wasn't legislated. The legislation comes afterwards. They come out and they say, treat us as people. We are human beings. Rosa Parks is not going to sit down at the back of the bus. And it's people showing that they truly believe in justice that eventually inspires courts and legislatures to go with that tide of history. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a while. I hope that we can get our act together, prevent massive redistricting between now and 2026, and flip things around in Congress so that we can at least put the brakes on some of these. There's some harms that are not going to be undone, and some ridiculous things. I mean, Trump with his 90,000 square foot ballroom that's going to be bigger than the White. I mean, if those kinds of things get built, if our rivers are polluted. I'm teaching a course on the right to water this next quarter, and just today started addressing how I'm going to talk to my students about the dismantling of environmental protections and how, what's going to happen we haven't seen the full strength of those harms, and then we're going to have to think about how to reverse them. So I think, loving our friends and family, listening to good music, enjoying our lakefront, we have to keep fueling ourselves however we do it with those things that will inspire us to keep going. And your father is certainly an inspiration.
Well,
and it was an honor to see him.
Well, you're an inspiration, and I have to thank you. You don't know how moved I was to meet you and to see you, because it meant so much to that Texas delegation, because they felt the solidarity. It is always wonderful, and you never know where the love is going to come from. Everybody, you never know.
Yeah,
and these people,
and nobody does this stuff alone. I bring
Yeah.
my legacy, I bring my students, I bring my colleagues, my firm partners. We have to be working on this together, all of us holding hands to walk forward.
Well, because we're in this together, everybody.
Yes.
Black people, vulnerable people everywhere, are the canaries in the mine.
Mm-hmm.
And believe me, when the canary comes up dead or gasping for breath, you got a problem. This is where we are. Remember, interestingly enough, this is something that's never really discussed, Susan Zesh, and I know this will resonate with you. The Jewish Holocaust in Germany during the Second World War and Poland, but it was preceded by the Namibian Holocaust by the Germans. They killed 10 million Africans.
Oh, yeah. No, colonialism. Yeah, European colonialism was a huge Holocaust.
It's brutal. And so when it happens there, okay, it worked, then we can bring it to Europe and it can work. It's to the everlasting shame. Everybody pay attention. Washington, it was LA. It was Boston several years ago. It's LA.
And we have to say, have to say something about Gaza, where the Israeli government, and as a Jew, I'm very angry and ashamed of it, is causing another genocide.
Yeah.
By deliberate starvation, by shooting people who are showing up to try to get food. And so we're working on a lot of different fronts right now, and we can't give up. But we can't burn out either. So we have to figure out a way to maintain strength and solidarity and sensitivity in the middle of this hurricane of injustice.
Well, understand it's all the same fight. It's all the same fight. And if we begin to see our brother is not the other, but they're our brother and our sister, then I think we can win. I mean, it's my mother often says, I love we shall overcome. She said, but I think we got it wrong. We say God is on our side. She said, no, you have to be on God's side.
I like that.
What does God want? And I think that when you want not just a ceasefire, you want justice for the Palestinians.
Absolutely.
And you want security for Israelis. They're tied to each other. Lions and lambs always have to lie down together. That is the way it works. And so we have to, but you got to stop the killing. They just killed a Palestinian journalist 28 years
I know.
ago. I mean, but they've killed more journalists over there than have ever been killed in history. So Netanyahu is a symptom, but there's a deeper problem. It's just like Trump is a symptom, but there's a deeper problem because he's got J.D. Vance, who's 40. His spokesperson at the White House is 25. So Stephen Miller is a young man. I mean, you just keep on going. We continue to look at Netanyahu, we look at Trump, and certainly they are disturbing figures. But they're symptoms of a deeper problem. And if we don't look at the deeper crisis that they represent, wait a minute. It's just like taking a headache and then you find out that you really have a tumor.
And we need to be upstanders and not bystanders.
Well, now before we go, what is that?
It means it's a slogan that's used by an organization called Facing History that started out as Holocaust education and now does anti-racism curriculum for high schools. And CPS does a lot of work with them. So we have to stand up instead of just standing by. We can't just be observers. We have to bring whatever we can to the fight for justice.
Well, what did they say? First they came for the trade unionists, and they came for everybody. Then they came for me.
And there was no one left to protest.
No one. Think about that, everybody. Attorney Susan Zesh, I want to thank you for being with us. You're part of the family now, so you got to come back.
Thank you. Thank you.
You got to come back. Plus, we got work to do on Saturday because they will be back. Because, I think there's talk that they will hold out for many weeks. And the longer they hold out, the more of an opportunity we have to talk about what it is that they're doing, the Voting Rights Act. There's so much that is at play. I mean, now this is helping us to look at Washington, D.C. much more closely. All of this is important. Everybody, we have gone from the Texas Democrats looking at a mid-decade reapportionment to try and move Democrats out of their seats and replace them with Republicans to a mid-decade U.S. census. That's what the president wants, and he's calling for it in a year ending in 5 because that is when you can actually do something that is exceptional. You can have a mid-decade U.S. census and call for a redrawing of congressional districts, reapportionment. In a year ending in 5, though, only in a year ending in 5 in the middle of the decade. Oh, look, these people, they're swinging for the fences. He's calling for the removal of homeless people. Many of them are veterans, everybody.
Oh, yes.
Think about that. I mean, we can just keep on going. It's just we go from what, and then now the nation's capital is occupied by the military. What would Dwight Eisenhower say? He told us that there were not just material, but spiritual effects of having this military industrial complex overtake our society. And that is what we're seeing. Think about that. This is really, really dangerous.
Thank you for having me on, Santita.
Sending you so much love. Sending you so much love. Can't wait to have you back.
I'll be back. I'll bring friends.
Come on.
I'm certainly not doing this alone.
Oh, come on. We're going to have a good time. I can't wait.
Right.
Unfortunately, we've got a lot to do.
We do.
Attorney Susan Zesh, and of course, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds. And you all have been so wonderful. Chapearl and Bernadette and Robert and K-Mac and M. Diamande. There you go. And there's so many of you. And let me see. I want to say hello to everybody that I can. And there are many of you who are on other platforms that I cannot see. But I know that you are there and know that I love you. Robert Williams, shalom. Sending you, so Andre, and you were there first today, I do believe. And Prophetess Crystal Quarles, thank you so much for being here. Bernadette, liking and sharing, sending you so much love, my dear sister. Everybody on all the other platforms, please go to santitajackson.bsky.social. That is, I'm at Santita J on Twitter or X. I am Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. And of course, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Like and share, everybody. Like and share. And guess what? Being woke is a good thing. Don't sleep through this.
Absolutely.
The revolution you can't sleep through. You got to be in it. And there's a lot going on. And be grateful for being able to live through a time such as this. We can make this country what it's supposed to be. And maybe that's why we're being shaken into our senses. Think about this, everybody. Don't worry, it's not just me, it's we. Some people thought that this administration was only going to come for other people. And now the people who voted for this administration to come in, they're being deported. I don't do Schadenfreude well. I don't do that. I'm not saying, oh, shame on you. I'm saying, no, when someone speaks ill of anyone, you ought to step back, because trust me, one day you'll be on the receiving end of that if you keep on living. So think about that, everybody. Just be kind, be loving, be loving, be loving, and be loved. We can do not just better than this, we need to do right. I am Santita Jackson. This is the Santita Jackson Show, AM 950 Radio. Sending everybody so much love. God bless you.